Houve um tempo em que conceitos eram sólidos, ideias, ideologias, relações, blocos de pensamento moldando a realidade e a interação entre as pessoas. O século XX, com suas conquistas tecnológicas, embates políticos e guerras, viu o apogeu e o declínio desse mundo sólido. A pós-modernidade trouxe com ela a fluidez do líquido, ignorando divisões e barreiras, assumindo formas, ocupando espaços, diluindo certezas, crenças e práticas. A oposição entre o mundo sólido e o mundo líquido é criação da mente brilhante de Zygmunt Bauman, sociólogo, professor da London School of Economics e um dos mais respeitados intelectuais da atualidade. Prestes a completar 90 anos, Bauman guarda vivas as memórias da Polônia natal, do período que passou na União Soviética, da luta na Segunda Guerra Mundial e da consagração como acadêmico no Ocidente. Guarda também a inquietação que marca sua trajetória e aparece nos mais de 50 livros que escreveu. E guarda ainda o inconformismo de quem já foi vítima do antissemitismo e do stalinismo e sempre questionou as desigualdades e as injustiças da sociedade de mercado. Em recente passagem pelo Brasil, onde foi a estrela do evento Comunicação 360, Bauman conversou com o Milênio no Rio de Janeiro.
Having been through tough times in the 20th century yourself, like World War II, the rise and fall of communism, just to mention two of them, what do you make of the main characteristic of this beginning of 21st century?
Well, to put it in a nutshell, it's very different to 20th century. If you compare what I experienced being at a young age and full of hopes, expectations, and what I'm experiencing now, looking back and comparing and revising expectations, revising hopes, is that we are in a state of interregnum. That's the term which I like to use. Interregnum is the state between and betwixt. In the state of interregnum, old ways which we learned how to deal with the challenges of reality, they don't work properly any longer. The institutions of collective action, our political system, our party system, the way of organizing one's own life, relations with other people, all these learned ways of surviving in the world don't work properly any longer, but the new ways which could replace them are still on the drawing board. We don't have long-term vision, and our actions mostly consist in reacting to the latest crisis. But crises are also changing, are also liquid, they come and go, one is replaced by another. The headlines of today are old history tomorrow. The next headlines are effacing the old headlines from memory. So, turmoil.
And do you think that it's fair to say that today we have too much information, that we aren't able to gather all this information? We have the access, but we don't know what to do with it.
Well, you are absolutely right. You put your finger on the most painful place in our condition, really. As E.O. Wilson, the great biologist, expressed it very succinctly and very rightly. He said, we are drowning in information and starving for wisdom. We don't have time to transform, to recycle snippets of variegated information into a vision, into something which you can call wisdom. Wisdom tells you how to proceed. The great German philosopher Ludwig Wittgenstein used to say, to understand is knowing how to go on. And that's precisely what we are missing. We don't know how to go on.
You just mentioned the failure of our political institutions, the parties, the representativity, which is lacking all over the world. You've experienced the failure of the communist dream in Poland and in Soviet Union as well. What do you think was the biggest mistake of communism?
Communism was made to the measurements of the 19th century. Now, the 19th century was the period of great optimism. First of all, people were convinced, self-confident, priding themselves that with development of science and technology, we can remake the world, put it upside down. Just such a light, trouble-free relationship to reality. Reality is there in order to be recycled, in order to be changed, improved, and so on. That's one thing. And the other was the vision of the future itinerary, the road to the perfect society. Everybody will be working. It was the period of industrial revolution, and in the end, everybody will be a worker. Good society as a big factory with satisfied workers of the factory. That was a period of solid modernity, of industrial society. We are living now in liquid modernity. In post-industrial society, we are living in a society of consumers. At the passage from society of producers to society of consumers. That was one thing, very, very, very powerful, very important. To switching the focus from building the grounds for a power of society over nature, to, on the contrary, to the culture of short-termism, enjoyment, individualization, identifying the vision of happiness with the rising consumption. Now, all these are new phenomena which communists completely unprepared.
And if there is a consensus, and I think that we can say there is a consensus that communism lost this war, specific one. On the other hand, capitalism won. But we know that this victory also, in its way, has its failures, is lacking lots of solutions for lots of things. What are the biggest problems of the market society today for you?
The presence of communism outside the Iron Curtain prompted capitalism to limit its own destructive propensities, to keep inequality, social inequality within acceptable framework, not to let it go out of control, providing the laws, the rights to the employees, not just to the employers. The idea of flexible, of deregulation of labor market, for example, would be unthinkable, simply because there was the competitor outside, which weren't very careful, they made propaganda, and it was not easy. Now, suddenly, everything is possible. No one watches you. You can do whatever you like. You can use whatever resources you possess in order to promote your own interests. And that is potentially catastrophic. The lack of self-constraint, that's what's happening now. And besides, after first reaction, after introducing Margaret Thatcher, Ronald Reagan, neoliberal idea of society, we had 30 years of what I called consumerist orgy. We spent money we didn't earn. We were hopeful about the future, that future we will repay what we are borrowing now. And it ended, as you well know, in 2007, 2008, credit collapse. Now we are again in a starting point.
One of the biggest issues of this new starting point is the issue of inequality. You've written a lot about it. And we are right now in Brazil, one of the most unequal countries all over the world, even being a rich country. And apparently it's clear that the riches of few doesn't benefit us all. How to make this equation a bit more balanced in a democracy?
Well, inequality is not only increasing, it changes its character, it changes its structure. It is connected to the absence of these constraints which capitalism imposes upon itself to keep things in order, digestible, endurable, acceptable. They disappeared, and what's happening in the result? Inequality changed its nature because the victims of inequality of society were, in the old period, in the old era, people living in poverty, at the bottom of society, the outcasts of society. It is not like this at all now, because we are witnessing the process with guys standing, up and coming sociologists coined the term precariat. So what we call middle class, which was the most successful, self-confident part of society, now is being transformed very fast, in fact, into precariat, some sort of an equivalent of the old times proletariat. People who are uncertain, unsure about their position. According to the latest ideas of economists, people who know the things better than me and do the statistics, it is not longer the question of the upper quartile of the population and the bottom of quartile. It is the conflict between 1% at the top and 99% all the rest of society. I don't know whether you notice that the added value in United States of America after the credit crisis, there was some recovery and there was added value to the wealth of America after the crisis. But 94% of this added value was taken by 1% of the population. All the rest had to share in 7%.
But having said that, even with these impressive figures that you're mentioning, there are still economists, and not only economists, but journalists, analysts, saying that the market can regulate even inequality. That if we leave the market to itself, work freely, we're going to be better off at some point. What would you argue back?
Market is explicitly, brutally incapable of repairing harms which it is doing. It creates problems, but it can't resolve them. It can't resolve them, and for that, a different kind of thing is needed. Market is pure power, pure power released from all constraints. Power means ability to have things done, and market is very good in that, in creating new demand for new products, in distributing funds going from Brazil, say, to Africa, because there's a cheaper labor force there. It has real power. It can therefore influence your conditions of life, the conditions of life of your children, of your grandchildren, your unborn great-grandchildren. It can be done. But power let loose without control is a very dangerous thing. It gives profits, transitory profits to some people, but a lot of trouble to great majority. In order to keep power on leash and prevent it from destroying itself, you need politics. Politics is the ability to decide which things ought to be done.
Talking about conflict, crisis, and the reaction to this crisis, we are living right now the crisis of the refugees. It started as the crisis of the illegal immigrants, as they called in the beginning, but we soon realized it is a refugee crisis. How are you seeing the reaction of the world powers to this crisis?
Well, it is not a one-off event. It is not a novelty, in fact. Novelty is the amount of attention which is dedicated to the issue, because it has been recently dramatized, partly with the help of television cameras, which shows the children being washed out by the sea, and something which happens in Lampedusa, hundreds of people drowning in unseaworthy ships. But massive migration accompanies modern era from the very start. Take Brazil. It is product of mass migration. The US. People from Italy, from Spain, from Portugal came here and to create their own life. Why they came here? They came here because they were looking for jobs, for drinking water, for decent conditions of life, and they couldn't be provided in their own country. Now the situation, the reaction of Europe, it has twofold impact, really. On the one hand, you have business interests. They are actually interested in bringing these people in.
It's workforce.
It promises more profit, to put it very simply. On the other hand, it is a quite expectable reaction of fear of strangers. They are coming here to flood up us. We will drown. We will be inundated by that. For employees, not for employers, but for employees, they signal competition, and competition which will press down their own income. They will be used in order to reject the demands of the existing employees, or perhaps even deprive them of their jobs. So there are two different pressures, again.
Changing subject now, we're in the end of, almost in the end of our conversation. In this world of hyper communication, of any sort of information at a click's distance in your computer, what role do you see for traditional education, schools and universities, and also for traditional journalism, as we can call it?
Again, you raised one of the most important and most painful problems of today. I think education acquires a tremendously important role in contemporary situation. I like to refer to a Chinese folk wisdom going back to the times of Confucius, and the wisdom says that if you plan for a year, sow corn. If you plan for 10 years, plant a tree. If you plan for 100 years, educate people. And that's exactly what we are losing, from our knowledge, from our awareness. The education today, our system of education, is one of the collateral victims of what I mentioned before, the short-termist culture. Short-termist culture. Education and short-termism is a contradiction in adjecta. It's a contradiction in terms. You can't have it together, Either you have proper education or you have short-termism, but you can't have them both at the same time. And that's a terrible problem. In the history of human society, since the ancient Greek invented the idea of paideia, education was constantly in crisis, or some sort of crisis, because circumstances kept changing and they have to adjust themselves to new information and so on. But this crisis is very, very basic, very essential basic. You rightly mentioned this context, new technology, information technology, which is a library of snippets, of bits and pieces, without glue, without adhesive. to recycle them into wisdom, into knowledge. And
the
also,
flow is
also
enormous.
it destroys certain psychological capacities of ours, like attention, focusing attention, consistency, what is called linear thinking. When you pursue a tract, you know, consistently, you see it off and go to the end. Now, there are changes in human psyche. Completely new situation which puts educators in a very, very difficult situation. They have to do quite a lot of rethinking.
Trying not to end this conversation in a sad note.
Yeah.
What gives you hope when you look around, initiatives, projects, things that you've seen being done that give you hope about the future of mankind?
Well, you see, the older I am, the wider is my perspective on which I base my evaluation of the situation. I know that first I concentrated on some excesses of modernity, then I passed over to analyze the logic or the illogicality of the liquid modernity. They were historically confined studies. But if it's not my invention what I'm going to say, but I think I am pessimist in the short term and optimist in the long term. Because when you look at history of humanity, which is, in spite of our tendency to forget history and crisis of historical memory, in spite of that, the history of humanity is encouraging. It was much more cruel, much more nasty before. It is much less cruel, much less nasty now, in spite of the all awful outrages which happened. And there were many crises in history of humanity, many periods of interregnum, where people didn't know what to do, but always finally they found a way. The only really worry of mine is how soon they will find a way now. How many people will have to be victims until the solution is found. That's the only thing I worry about.
Thank you very much, Professor Bauman. Thank you very, very much.